Hopefully this works. I actually thought they were leaving to come back and sing another song because I could sit there all day and listen to that. Wonderful stuff. Thank you for BA for the intro. I'm already messing up because I can't read without my glasses. So while I'm going, I will say I love music. I love music that points us to Christ. And it's funny, I'm assuming that somebody shared the topic for today, and a lot of the songs were around the authority and the supremacy of Christ. And so if you listen to the words, you hear what I'm going to talk about this morning. But I want to talk a little bit about, when BA says, give me some information to introduce you, it's kind of like, okay, well, here's my rap sheet. Here's a couple of facts and figures, and that should be enough. But I wanted to explain a little bit about our journey here because it really does reflect what I think about Christ and the authority that he should be in our lives. So BA mentioned that Tina and I are currently sort of in flux. We're back and forth between here and Chesterfield. We still teach in a class of young couples in Chesterfield. But we bought a lake house about 3 years ago. COVID said move down to the lake house, because when you have the option to work remotely from a one-bedroom apartment in Chesterfield or a lake house, you pick the lake house, right? So what we didn't want to do, though, is when we were down here, is we didn't want to skip going to church, right? So let's find a local community of believers and immerse ourselves in that. It's a great connection point. It's great to get to, connected to God, but also to other people. And so we looked around, and I don't know, we visited 3 or 4 churches personally, but we also did some research online. And, I got to admit, some of the churches that we looked at were just like, I don't believe in what they're saying. I don't believe in what they're espousing. I don't believe the message that they're giving about Christ. We need to find the one that does. And so I come across this young pastor from Louisiana that I can't understand half the words he says, and saw his messages and said, this is probably worth checking out. And so I sent a message to the church and said, hey, want to get to know you? I've got a few questions. One of the things that I've learned from a buddy of mine in Chesterfield is when you're looking for a church, ask questions. Find out what they believe. Ask them directly. Because if you just try to come and infer what the message is, you're probably gonna be wrong. So I send a message. Chet responds back, says, yeah, hey, let's get together. Let's do dinner at our house on a Friday night. And I'm like, cool, we can do that. I like to eat. We're Baptists, right? We have food and everything. So we set up a time for a Friday night. And then I get a message from Chet that says, hey, how about we do lunch on Wednesday before you come out there? And I'm like, is this because he doesn't trust me? Or is this just normal protocol? So anyway, lunch with Chet was me peppering him with questions about the Bible, about his beliefs, about the church, about the structure, about the interactions, about the youth program, about anything and everything. And he still ate and I still ate, but we were there a couple hours. And then Tina and I went and had dinner with him and Nicole and had a wonderful time. Obviously, it was a good interaction. And I will say that because the one thing that I heard very clearly from Chet is a focus on Jesus Christ that exists in this building, whether we're young or old or children or babies crying or whatever's going on, there's a focus on Jesus Christ. So that's what I want to talk about this morning. Is I really want to emphasize the authority, the supremacy of Christ, and I'm going to do it in a really weird way. So I kind of want to ask, how many people got the email this week and said they spelled Mount wrong? They didn't. This is going to be a Sermon on the Mount, and there's a few reasons for it. I need my glasses now, but I will say that listening to one of the pastors at Swift Creek, he said that every good sermon needs a sports analogy because there's so much that goes on in sports that correlates to what we see in the church world and the encouragement that we give and the passion that we have, that there are great analogies. So why not build a message or a lesson around a sport, right? Let's just immerse in the whole thing. And so I personally love baseball. I love this time of year. We now know who's going to be in the World Series. I was hoping for the Red Sox, but they did not make it. And, one of the reasons that I love baseball is just the pace of play and the need to think through what you're doing on the field. There's always a scenario, there's always a situation that you have to think through. I have 3 boys, B.A. mentioned it. I coached them for 15 years across the 3 boys, coaching baseball, basketball, soccer, which I knew nothing about. But baseball is always my heart. If you look at 2021, you could honestly say 2021 was the year of the pitcher. If you follow Major League Baseball, there were 7 no-hitters done by individuals. There were 2 no-hitters that were done by teams where multiple pitchers combined to throw a no-hitter. And then there was also the Madison Bumgarner game, which if you follow Major League Baseball, if you had a doubleheader, it was only a 7-inning game. You didn't go full 9 innings. They did 7 innings for the first game, 7 innings for the second game. Madison Bumgarner pitched a no-hitter for 7 innings, but it doesn't count because clearly it didn't happen. It wasn't 9 innings. That brought me around, and by the way, this is how I think, like the dryer, the things tumbling in the dryer of my head are incredible here, but Madison Bumgarner brings me back to 2014 because I mentioned the Red Sox. I am a Red Sox fan, but I'm actually a very, very, very passionate Kansas City Royals fan. And in 2014, they lost the World Series to the San Francisco Giants because of Madison Bumgarner. He was a pitcher for the Giants. They were only supposed to see him twice. He's a fantastic pitcher. They were only supposed to see him twice. They saw him 3 times. And if you know the World Series, you know the pain and the angst that I had because he came in Game 7 and pitched 5 innings after only 2 days of rest. Pitchers don't pitch after 2 days of rest. Starting pitchers don't. 5 innings, shut Kansas City down. The Giants won the World Series, and I'm mad at Madison Bumgarner forever. In that World Series, he only gave up 1 run in 21 innings. That was dominance. And so it got me thinking, I spent about 10 years ago at a sports camp with our youth. We went to Cleveland and took a bunch of students up to Cleveland, did a sports camp. I ran baseball because I love baseball. But I would every day ask the kids a question, trivia, nonsense, whatever it was, and just to kind of keep their minds engaged. Who was the only player to ever win a batting title in 3 different decades? Anybody know? No, George Brett, Kansas City Royals. My youngest son is named Brett because George Brett is my favorite baseball player. It all comes back around. But one of the questions that one of the kids asked me that I thought was interesting was, could Jesus hit a curveball? I'm like, well, so first of all, yes, but I don't know. And so I thought, well, if Jesus was a batter, he would come up maybe 3 or 4 times a day. How much impact can you have in a game? How much impact can you have on a game if you only come up 3 or 4 times? A good impact, but not as much as if you were the pitcher standing on the mound in control of the game with a focus on your authority and your command and the way that you could bring the team together. That's the Jesus that I picture. So, when you're talking about doing something in the authority of Jesus, I've talked to a lot of people. By the way, I pace, so I'm going to start with the whole moving back and forth here. But when you talk to people about Jesus, you'll get different pictures from them. You'll get, he's a good man, he's a good prophet, he's a good teacher, he's wise, he heals people, so clearly he's a good healer, he's a good leader. He had 12 people that devoted their lives to following him. All of those are true, and all of those are good things. But it gives us this picture of this ethereal guru who's sort of floating around, waiting for something to happen and directing people and having, happy golf clap time when something good happens. That's not the Jesus that I picture. The Jesus that I picture is actually described by Toby Mac. If you know Toby Mac, hip-hop artist. Toby Mac, on his live album called Alive and Transported, talked about how he wrote the song called The Slam. And The Slam is a rockin' hip-hop song that, frankly, I love to drop the top on my Jeep and crank it up and take what I call my mobile witnessing vehicle out down the road of Hull Street in Chesterfield and just let everybody hear it. But anyway, that's a side story. So The Slam is all about Jesus. And what he says is, I went to see the Passion of the Christ. And if you've seen The Passion of the Christ, you'll understand what he talks about here. But he said, I came out of the movie theater and I was sitting in my car and I thought, my Jesus, he didn't halfway do it. He slammed. He did things that nobody else could do. And so that's somebody that I want to follow. And so, when I think of that, and I want to talk about the authority of Jesus, it's easy to go certain places. And you can go back, Nolan, one slide if you would, to Jesus as an authority figure. Because there are great places. Matter of fact, there's a whole Bible about how authoritative Jesus is. Immediately, though, I could go to Colossians, and in particular, Colossians 1:15 through 18. The book of Colossians is Paul writing a letter to the city of Colossae saying, I know that there are all these things going on. I know you have witch doctors and healers and other religions and cults and sects coming at you and trying to get you to believe what they say. But Christ is supreme. That's the whole essence of the letter. In chapter 1, verse 15 through 18, he says, Christ, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created that are in heaven and are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. He's the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have preeminence. Let it be clear, all these other things that you're hearing about, throw them out. Because Christ is supreme and he's the one that you need to follow. So, if I'm going to talk about the authority of Christ, I could go there. Like, we could spend all day there. Camp out, have a nice, s'mores and all that. We could go right into 4 o'clock when the Harvest Festival starts. But I'm not going to do that. That's not the David Peat way. I could go to Revelations. Revelation is all about Jesus. And in particular, Revelation 12, verses 10 and 11 says, Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him by what? By the blood of the Lamb, the authority of Christ. This Messiah that we've been looking for, he's the one that cast out Satan. So I could go to Revelation. That's a good place to go. That's not the David Peat way. I could go to Matthew 28. Most of us know Matthew 28 because of the Great Commission. The Great Commission says, Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I left out a verse, though, because verse 18 answers the question that somebody would ask when they heard that. Well, why should I do that? Who are you to tell me what to do and go on mission and tell people about you? Well, verse 18 says, Jesus came and spoke to them saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. That's why you should go, and that's why you should listen to him. So I could go there, but I didn't go there. And so where did I go? Nolan, you can go to the next slide. I put Jesus on the pitcher's mound. And the reason for that is exactly what I talked about a little while ago. The pitcher, in my mind, in a baseball game, controls the game. But he's got to have a variety of things to allow him to do that. He's got to have a variety of pitches. Most starting pitchers have 3 or 4 really good pitches in their arsenal, or they don't last long in the major leagues. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about 3 pitches that I believe that Jesus illustrates through the things that he does to show his authority and his command. First one's a curveball. Now, if you play baseball, you know that curveball is a breaking pitch. Now, when I played baseball, we actually thought of a curveball 2 different ways. One was I could be standing in the batter's box, and that ball's coming right at me, and I step out because I think I'm going to get hit, and then it tails back in, and it's a strike, and I'm scared. I couldn't hit anyway as a kid. The curveball that you talk about in the majors today, though, is more of what we would call a 12-6 curveball. Starts up high, breaks down, and the batter has no idea where it's coming. Okay? And you do that, like, if you know anything about pitching, it's all about the seams of the baseball. A curveball has a tumbling action that brings it over, and because of that tumbling action, the seams catch the air around it, and it causes the ball to do different things. Okay? So with a curveball, what you're ideally doing is getting the batter to change their eyesight to think anything that comes in this high is going to be too high for me to swing at. But a curveball darts down and comes into the strike zone, and they miss their opportunity. But you're setting them up for something else. Best curveball I've ever seen is a guy you've never heard of called Mike McDougal. Mike McDougal is about 6'5", gangly and skinny, long arms, long legs. When he pitched, everything he had was coming at you, and you can only pray that you recognize when he lets go of the ball, never mind how do you hit it. The guy that he struck out with a curveball, though, you probably have heard of because he's one of the greatest hitters ever in Major League Baseball, and that's Albert Pujols, who, because the Braves beat the Dodgers last night, is now going home because he doesn't get to play in the World Series. Fantastic player, though. Mike McDougal one day threw him what I would call a knee buckler. And if you follow baseball, what a knee buckler is that ball is coming in, and I think it's going to do something, and I kind of, don't know, and I bail out. And Albert Pujols, Hall of Fame hitter, 600-plus home runs, bailed out like David Peat at 12 years old in Little League. And it was just the most amazing thing to see because Mike McDougal was pitching for the Kansas City Royals at the time. So you're asking yourself, well, wait a minute, Jesus doesn't throw balls with tumbling action and things like that. Where in the world are you going with this? Well, if you go to Matthew 21, by the way, I'm going to put these up there and you can turn if you want to. But if you go to Matthew 21, Jesus comes into the temple and he's getting ready to teach. And verses 23 through 27 say, "Now when he came into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people confronted him as he was teaching and said, 'By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?' But Jesus answered and said to them, 'I will also ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, where was it from? From heaven or from men?'" Talking about John the Baptist here. "And they reasoned among themselves, saying, 'If we say from heaven, he will say to us, why then did you not believe him? But if we say from men, we fear the multitude, for all count John as a prophet.' So they answered Jesus and said, 'We do not know.' And he said to them, 'Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things.'" So what Jesus did to them in that moment is he took a question by these religious leaders that was very specifically to trip him up. The nature of this question is one that, we kind of joke about, and you may have heard this. Somebody walk up to a man and say, "Have you stopped beating your wife?" Right? How do you answer that question? If you say, "Yes, I've stopped beating my wife," then it implies that you were beating your wife. If you say no, it implies that you're still doing it. It's a trick question. They were giving him a trick question here. And in particular, they were giving him this trick question because days earlier was his triumphal entry where he came through to palm leaves and accolades and hosannas, and they clearly didn't like it. This was somebody that they didn't think should be getting that kind of attention. They should be getting that kind of attention. So they wanted to trick him. Jesus threw him a curveball. Said, "What do you do with John the Baptist?" And they recognized it right away. Right? Well, if we answer this way, then why didn't we believe him? But if we answer this way, the people are going to have an uprising because they think he's a prophet. So Jesus shows them, first of all, that they don't know as much as they think they know. But the second thing is, because they couldn't answer him, the bottom of their argument, so to speak, dropped out, just like the bottom of a curveball drops out. Strike one. Strike two is going to be the knuckleball. Now, knuckleball is interesting. And, B.A. mentioned that I played softball for the church. I love it. I love softball. I'm not good enough to play baseball, but I love softball because, they throw it in and it's a slow pitch. Like, who can't hit that? Well, actually, there have been times when I couldn't hit that either, but you get it. But in slow pitch, you will see somebody throw a knuckleball, and it's clearly a knuckleball. And the essence of a knuckleball is that it doesn't move. It doesn't rotate. It doesn't turn. The idea of a knuckleball is you throw it, And because it doesn't turn, the seams catch the air in different ways, and it sort of goes all over the place. I mean, like all over the place. Now, in softball, that doesn't really matter for the batter. As much as pitchers like to say, I'm throwing a knuckleball and you can't hit it, it really doesn't matter. It actually does matter for the fielder. I've been in the outfield and tried to catch one, and I see it going all over the place and have no idea where it's going to land. Okay? Best knuckleball I've ever seen, Tim Wakefield. If you know Tim Wakefield played for the Pittsburgh Pirates for a while. He did not play for the Royals, by the way. I'll just throw that out there. But he played for the Pirates, but he really made his name pitching for the Boston Red Sox and took them to playoffs and championships with his knuckleball. However, in 1997, he hit 16 batters, which was a major league record. He topped that in 2001 by hitting 18 batters. And a lot of that is that the knuckleball is just so unreliable where you throw it. As a matter of fact, he had a personal catcher, Doug Mirabelli, who had an oversized catcher's mitt because he didn't know where the ball was going to go. So if he could actually get something on it and keep it from getting by him, that was success. And so the whole idea that it floats in there and it's all over the place and you don't know what to do with it is the idea behind what Jesus does in Mark 15, verses 1 through 5, which say, immediately in the morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. And they bound Jesus, led him away, and delivered him to Pilate. Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him and said, "It is as you say." And the chief priests accused him of many things, but he answered nothing. Then Pilate asked him again, saying, "Do you answer nothing? See how many things they testify against you?" But Jesus still answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. Now, if you know the context of this story, this was actually one of the illegal, and I'll use air quotes here, trials that Jesus was under. Because from the time that they came to get him in the Garden of Gethsemane, he had 6 trials, or what we would faction as trials. 6 trials. 3 of them were religious, done by primarily the Jews. 3 of them were governmental, done by the Romans and some Jewish leadership. This is one of them. And again, the nature of this is to trick Jesus into saying something that would dispel the thought that he was an authoritative figure and was the king of the Jews. And so, consistent with Scripture, though, as he was apt to do, Jesus says nothing unless he's directly asked. Leviticus 5:1 basically says a man bears guilt or he sins if he utters or witnesses an untrue oath by others. So if Jesus said anything incorrect by virtue of Leviticus 5, he was a liar, he was a sinner, he could not possibly be the Messiah that people were claiming that he could be. So instead, Jesus floats his knuckleball in there and says, you have no idea where this is going to land, but I'm going to stand here and not answer your questions. Now, you might say he actually did answer the question because I said he answered him and said, it is as you say. In our common vernacular, what he would be saying is, well, if that's what you think. So not affirming what they were saying, but sort of in their mind going, wait a minute, did he agree with us? Did he not agree with us? Like, how did he answer the question? He didn't answer the question. He set them on a journey of just confused befuddlement. And so, Pilate looks at him and says, I don't know what to do with you. You see twice where Pilate will wash his hands of Jesus because despite all these accusations coming his way, Jesus is a firm, authoritative figure that stands there and does nothing to dispel the fact that he is the called Messiah. Luke 23:2 actually tells us what the accusations were. They said Jesus incited the people to riot, that he told them not to pay their taxes, and that he fancied himself a king in political opposition to Rome. Now, this was very different. If you follow the accusations against Jesus, they went from blasphemy to he's a rabble-rouser. Because blasphemy to Pilate and the Romans meant nothing. He didn't care. Blaspheme your God. He's just one of the gods we believe in. What do we care about that? So because that wasn't going to resonate with Pilate, the accusations are, Well, he's stirring up the people and he's making it hard for you. And he calls himself a king, and you shouldn't have any other king but Caesar. That's why Pilate got involved. But Jesus won't answer him. So Pilate hands him back. And so obviously confused, if you have no idea where the ball's going, the knuckleball slides on by. It's no hit. Strike two. So now, because we've got the batter's eye all over the place, he's looking for the curveball. It's up high. It dips low. He's looking for something else, and this knuckleball, this floater comes in, and he has no idea what Jesus just threw, and he's just befuddled. Strike three is the get-him-out pitch. Strike three is a fastball. Okay? And if you've ever pitched, you know that the fastball is your ultimate weapon. If you watch the movie Rookie of the Year, they call it the high stinking cheese. If you've watched Bull Durham, Nuke Lelouch says, I want to announce my presence with authority, because the fastball does that. But the idea here is if the curveball took my eyes up here and I'm expecting it to drop down here, when I throw a fastball up here, he's going to swing down here and it's right by him. Or I can throw the fastball low and away for the K or something like that, something along those lines. But the fastball is meant to be that thing that announces how authoritative the pitcher is. Okay? Best fastball I've ever seen. I don't even know if it's the best fastball I've ever seen, but it's the most memorable one. It came from the All-Star game in 1993. Randy Johnson, again, very tall. I think he's 6'10", gangly, all arms and legs, left-hander. John Kruk came up to bat. And John Kruk is a hefty boy who hit a lot of home runs. He played for the Phillies. John Kruk came up to bat. He's left-handed. Well, the idea is a lefty-lefty combo actually benefits the pitcher because the ball's coming in very close to the batter. John Kruk got up there, and I probably can't even show this, but in swinging, swung like this to move away from the plate because he was just afraid of this ball coming in. And it was so funny because he did it 3 times and just threw his helmet down, threw his bat down, and walked off. What that did, though, is it set the precedence for Larry Walker, who came in 1997 and said, again, a left-handed power hitter, said, I'm not even messing with that. Put his helmet on backwards and got on the right-hand side of the plate and said, I'll take my chances, because he didn't want to mess with the left-handed fastball coming in. So Randy Johnson, fantastic pitcher, again, will be in the Hall of Fame. Jesus, however, is better, because his fastball comes at the expense of the scribes and the Pharisees. And in verses 29 through 36 of Matthew 23, Jesus says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered prophets. You're admitting the fact that you are sons of the people that murdered prophets. But you're saying to yourselves, we wouldn't do that. We won't do that. He says, therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. In other words, you should feel just as guilty for what you're doing now. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Now, I don't know about any of you. I think if I was called a brood of vipers, I would be a little offended. Okay? This is a heavy-hitting Jesus that is not an ethereal guru that sort of floats around and has good words and you crack open a fortune cookie and hear something nice. This is a Jesus that said, you are claiming to have an authority, yet you turn around and you're a hypocrite when you try to share that authority, because you're saying you're not doing something, but you're doing the exact same thing. Matter of fact, here's a little bit of foreshadowing for you. They're going to do the same thing to Jesus. When they put him on trial, they're doing the same thing of accusing him of things that they know are not true. Or at least they should ask the question, right? There's a difference between an atheist who says, I absolutely know that there's no God, and an agnostic that says, well, I don't think there's a God, but I ought to ask the question. Jesus probably turned some of those folks from, I'll say atheist, but ritualistic in their beliefs, to at least questioning of, wait a minute, should I do something different with this? But, emphasizing that they do their work to be seen and not to glorify God was a heavy hitter from Jesus. These were the Pharisees. If you hear Paul talk about his life as a Pharisee, he gives you some glimpse into their state of mind, their education, what they thought that they were doing by enforcing all these rules. And Jesus just turned all that upside down for them and said, you're a bunch of hypocrites. That's a fastball worth swinging at, but you're not going to hit it. Okay? So when he turns to the religious leaders and chastises them, he's essentially telling them, your treatment of the prophets, the ones that I've sent, the ones that you've heard of, are no different than the things that you accuse your parents of doing, your fathers of doing. You are the same people. You are the hypocrites. Now, Charles Spurgeon said this about Jesus' accusation that they bring this full measure of their father's guilt. Charles Spurgeon said, this is one of the most terrible sentences that ever fell from Christ's lips. It's like his message to Judas, thou that doest, do quickly. This crowning sin would fill up the measure of their father's guilt and bring down upon them the righteous judgment of God. In other words, they're not even worthy to be righteous to sit with God. Yet these are the Pharisees who believe they are the righteous ones that will be sitting with God. Jesus dispelled all of that with a fastball high and tight right under the chin, and they struck out. So if we look at the way that Jesus handled his business, and I'll close with this, is his pattern was give law to the proud, grace to the humble. Okay? Jesus didn't give me grace. Didn't give me law. I didn't understand law. I didn't know what that would mean. He gave me humble. He hit me where I was. I had never met him in that way. And it's a story as Tina and I spend more time here and we get together, I'm happy to share. I don't have the story that Chet has. I wasn't into drugs. I didn't do any of that stuff. But I did think I was a really good person. And God humbled me and said, this is how you're going to come to me. Okay? Law to the proud, grace to the humble. But if I look at Jesus, I think I mentioned earlier, I've always thought of baseball as a thinking man's game, and Jesus is a thinking man's pitcher. He knows what's going on. He knows what pitch to throw. He knows how to bring it home in a way that will resonate with the audience that he's speaking to. But I will say this too, and Nolan, you can go to the next slide. But if Jesus did claim to be God, okay, if he accepted this authority that we read about in the Bible, if he claimed to be God, he's the only leader of a major world religion to have ever done that. Muhammad didn't do it. Buddha didn't do it. Charles Taze Russell of the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't do it. Joseph Smith of the Mormons didn't do it. None of them claimed to be God. Jesus did. And, folks can say, well, wait a minute, did Jesus really claim to be God? Because there's a whole lot of Paul talking about Jesus as being God. There's a whole lot of Peter, others talking about Jesus being God. But did Jesus actually do that? Yeah, as a matter of fact, he did. In John 8, verse 24, Jesus says, if you do not believe that I am, and if you go there, and don't go there because I'm only there a short time, but he says, if you do not believe that I am, you shall die in your sins. Now, if you open your Bible and go there, you're going to see some brackets with the word he in the middle of it. And I shared this a couple of weeks ago when we were doing Bible study here on Wednesday nights, which, by the way, come join us on Wednesday nights. It's actually a really good discussion time. But if you do not believe that I am he, you shall die in your sins. I actually don't like the he being in there. Like if David Peat were to go back and rewrite the Bible, which I would not do. But if I were, I would remove that because that was entered so that we could understand a little better. Okay, Jesus is saying, well, if you don't believe that I'm him, then you should die in your sins. Jesus didn't need he. I am was a reference to what God said to Moses when Moses said, when I go to your people, who do I tell them sent me? Tell them I am sent you. So Jesus is referring to that. He's claiming the authority. He's claiming the oneness with God there. And in John 8, verse 58, he says, before Abraham was, I am. We can go to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus walks to Judas and to these leaders that have come to capture him. And by the way, I have a friend that went to Israel, and if you've ever been there, he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he said, if you stand in the place in the garden where people believe that Jesus was, and you look where the army would have come from, they actually have a zigzag path that comes down there. Jesus would have been standing there going, all right, guys, I don't have all night. Can you get here? This wasn't a surprise. Jesus was in the garden and Judas came. Jesus said, whom do you seek? Arma says, we seek Jesus of Nazareth. Again, Jesus said, I am. If you remember what their reaction was, they fell back. An army of people taking this one man, and they fell back because they knew what what the implication was. He was claiming to be one with God. He was claiming to have the authority of God, and they recognized that, and they fell away because of it. But I will say the ultimate question comes down to when Jesus was again in one of his other illegal trials. Mark 14, verse 61, Jesus is asked, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? What do you think he answered? You can say it. I am. But in saying that, he said three things. He said, I am the Messiah. He said, I am the Son of God. And I am the Son of Man. Because Jesus Christ is 100% God and 100% man. I don't know how the math works. It just works. And so if we're going to follow Jesus and we're going to recognize his authority, you should have a reaction to that. And we're going to go to a time now of invitation. They're going to play a video for me. I actually, because Chet gave over the reins, right? So let's take advantage of it. But I actually asked that we do a video for the invitation time because I think it's important to do an invitation because if you really do understand the authority of Christ, you should have a reaction to that. And that reaction probably follows one of three things. The first one is you can reject him. Okay, that's your right. You can say, I hear everything that you're saying. I don't think that's true. I'm going to reject it. Maybe I'll come back and listen to you later again, or maybe I'll do something else. But you have that. If you do that, you're going to be ignoring history, you're going to be ignoring facts, you're going to be ignoring what's in the Bible, and you're going to be ignoring what God has laid forth for the plan of salvation through his Son, Jesus Christ. That is your option. Option number two is you can accept him. If you've never done it before, I'm going to be standing down here for 3 minutes and 12 seconds. And I say that because that's how long the video is. It's going to be awkward for me because I don't like doing that. I don't like idle time. I may be singing. If you see me singing, approach carefully because I do not sing as beautifully as these girls just did. But if you've never committed your life to Christ, come at least ask the question, what does that mean? How do I start that process? Like, I hear what you're saying. I want to make him the authority, but I don't know what that looks like. Come ask. I know there are deacons in here. I'll connect you with a deacon, or we'll just sit down and have a personal chat for however long you want. But you can accept him. The last one you can do is, because I will say as a born-again, blood-washed believer in Jesus Christ, there are some times where I sit this one out. The invitation's not for me. I've already accepted it. Why should I do anything? That is the wrong attitude. Because if Jesus is going to be the authority of our lives, we have a response as well. And that is to stand up for him. It's to do things for him. I just heard BA announce we need some people to help move tables. Like, immersing in the local church is something that you can do. Teach a class, teach Awanas, watch babies in the nursery, which is actually kind of fun. Do something that shows that you believe that he's the authority and immerses you in the local church. I would also say that, if you are not a member of the church, we are not members of the church. We are, however, moving our membership here. because we believe in what's taught here. We believe that Christ is represented here. And frankly, I will tell you, if you are visiting today, these are some of the nicest people you're ever going to run into. Like we came in the back door one day and they're loving, like, ooh, new people. And they just suck up to you and just want to love on you. It's wonderful. Matter of fact, some of y'all knew that my buddy from college, Clyde, and his wife Lori are here before I did, because they walked in the door and evidently you came over and grabbed them and loved on them. All of these are good responses to making Christ the authority in your life. So we're going to do this. The song that we're going to play is this is a commercial for a movie called the Jesus Music, I think it is. I mentioned I love music. There are a lot of the artists that I really love in this video. But it's a song called Stand by the Newsboys. Like I said, it's either 3 minutes and 12 seconds or 3 minutes and 22. Whatever the length of the video, I'm going to be standing down here. React to what Jesus is doing, because he's a wonderful, wonderful God and deserves the authority that we assign to him. So at the end of the video, I have actually asked BA if he'll come up and pray. I'm going to do I know you think it's magic on a Sunday morning when the pastor is up here and then suddenly he's back there ready to shake a hand. It's actually not magic. He leaves when they're praying. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll be out at the back door. If you want to come, knuckle bumps, shake a hand, give a hug, whatever. I will be back there and happy to say hi. But let's go ahead and I'm gonna pray for the invitation, and then Nolan, if you'll play the video, and then BA can come up and close this when it's over.